Om Guruve Namah. Good. So we're going to start quite simple. And basically, I'm going to go through the data entry screen and maybe a few things that people haven't discovered. Of course, there'll always be things that some of you know, but that's how it is, so bear with me. And then we'll work into the main screen and we'll go through some of the usability features, and some of that will lead into different techniques we can do with the software. So we'll see how far we get. Okay, I guess everybody's learned how to put in data. It's pretty easy. But sometimes people don't understand fully about the value of the lists. This here in the middle is the list box. When you hover over a particular chart, it shows you the basic data. And this is the alphabetical list. That doesn't need a lot of explanation. A little later, we'll tell you about how to shift from first last name to last first name. And whatever you choose will show up in the list. But there are other lists which are quite useful. For example, see at the top here, we have the list of all the lists. And the second one is called unsorted or chronological. And that shows the ones that were entered most recently. So I personally use this all the time because I'm usually needing to see the charts that I entered recently, recent clients and things like that. So that's also an option. Then this third button here, these buttons are the top popular lists, but they're all under here as well. You see this one, it says link to primary. This is the same thing as pressing this LI button here. This is alphabetical, unsorted, linked. So at the moment, there are no charts linked to Abraham Lincoln, but if you were doing a family and you had various members of the family, or, there's so many circumstances where you have linked charts. So I'll show you how you do the linking. It's very simple. First, you have to load the person's chart as the primary. That's basically you put the chart in here and you click OK. So that brings you into the main screen. And up here you see the person's name, and over here is usually a transit chart. But what we want to do is put some other chart here. So I'll show you a little bit later various ways of getting to what I call the native to chart. But an easy way is to just click on the date. So this is now the transit chart. So you could clear that and put something else here. You could select it from the list, some other person's chart. And then all you have to do is click link to primary, and it'll automatically appear on the linked list. So whenever you have a primary native, then you can easily get to all the linked charts just by selecting this list. That's one list. Then you have various other lists you can sort based on gender. Then we have the A group and the B group. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And then all these other are basically astrological sortings. So the first one is all the people with the sun sign in Aries. Now, whether it says Mesha or Aries, that's a choice in the options, which we'll deal with later. And so under here, this is the first level of sorting your data. So it'll sort the data by tropical sun positions, sidereal sun and moon, and other planet positions, nakshatras. There's just a vast number of choices here. These are people with Purva Bhadra in the ascendant. I got this thing running in a kind of Sanskrit mode at the moment, but I'll show you how to change that later, and so forth. So sometimes that's really useful. And then that just leaves the A and B groups. The A and B groups are places where you can sort of stack charts up as favorites. Like, it's a kind of favorites list. But the B group in particular is used for various sortings. When the software sorts and generates a group for you for some reason, then you can convert it into the B group. So it's always there when you click the B button. We'll go into that more a little later. That's the basic idea of lists. So now I'm going to talk about the locations charts. So basically, on our PCs, it's not so straightforward to get the location from the computer. We're all used to our mobile devices that know where we are at any minute. But PCs weren't really designed like that. So what you have to do is you have to tell it where you are, and you can save that record for future. So for example, if we click on show locations here, we'll see the list of locations that are already entered. So this particular database only has Los Angeles and San Francisco. So suppose we happen to be in Boston, we could click here, and it tells you that all you have to do is type in the name of the place and the state, and it'll do the rest of the work for you. You know, we kind of got used to software which makes us do a whole lot of unnecessary things. So that's why I put this notice, so you'll realize you just have to start typing. You don't have to click anywhere. So if you type in Boston, see it starts appearing in the right place. Then the easiest way to get to the next field here is by hitting the tab key on the keyboard. Or you can just click here. And then when you hit tab or click somewhere else, it's created the whole thing for you and saved it. And whatever is the last place that you used is remembered as the current location. So it'll tend to come up. It will come up whenever you ask for a transit chart. So you click on where it says now chart and you'll get that one. For example, if you let's go back to Abraham Lincoln, and if you click OK plus transit now, it'll give you the Boston transit chart. So that's the concept with locations. It's very straightforward. Now, the atlas tends to work automatically, and so you don't have to do anything really, because when you enter the place and the state or country, it will usually or almost invariably run the atlas for you. And running the atlas for you means it creates this longitude, latitude, time zone, and daylight saving. Now, time zones were only introduced, I think, at the end of the 19th century. So when Abraham Lincoln was born, there were no time zones. So we had a thing called local mean time, or LMT. And there's a little button here, it says LMT. And that's just in case you want to create a time zone, local time zone. But I may move this button at some point because just occasionally people click it accidentally, and then they want to know why they've got the wrong chart. Because of course, instead of saying 5 hours time zone, it says 5 hours, 42 minutes and 57 seconds, because that's based on Hodgenville, Kentucky. So that's just something to be aware of. But if you did, I suppose well, we won't, it doesn't work for this chart, but if you find that there's something funny here, a local mean time zone, so then you can just click the Atlas search button and it'll rerun the Atlas and get it right for you. If this button here, the Atlas search button, isn't dark, then you just click on one of these fields here and it'll go dark. So this is the basic idea about the Atlas. You can always run the Atlas by leaving this field, by going somewhere else, click here and go somewhere else, or click the Atlas search button. There's a button here for client information. It automatically fills in the date when you enter the chart. Just thought that was useful. And then the rest is up to you. You know, it's all, you're free to put what you like in these fields. And then down here we have occupation, which is also optional. And this rating is based on the Astro Data Bank. They have created a series of ratings, which are all listed here. And it lets us know how reliable the chart is and how the birth time was derived. So in this case, you see it's a B, or biography. So we don't know, we might have to rectify this chart, but at least we have a time. Now, there's some couple of interesting things here. You see this one says Prashna query. So this is for when you want to answer a question and you ask the client or the other person for a number. So you can do it for yourself. One way you could do that is when you click this button. Now there's some options in terms of this. Do you want to use the current chart or you want to have a now chart? So suppose you want it for the local location, then we click yes. And then you see that the choice can be out of 108 for the 108 Navamshas of the zodiac, or 249, which is the number of sub-periods based on the Vimshotri Dasha. You know, there's 9 Vimshotri Dashas, and each one has 9. And then there's some extras because of the dividing lines of the Rashis. So it comes out to 249. This is popular amongst the Krishnamurti Padati people, the KP people. So both are there. Now there are other options for choosing numbers like 12, but it's very difficult for the software to manage because it knows which sign you've chosen for the ascendant, but it really doesn't know what degree. While with these larger numbers, it's easy to just take the middle of the division and you get a reasonably accurate degree. So that's the way this thing works. And it'll randomly generate a number. You can just select that. Or you can take the number that you're given. And if you put in a number that's larger than one of these, it'll automatically adjust it down to within that range. So that's the Prashna thing. And then what will happen is when the chart is generated, it'll have an ascendant based on the number. The rest of the chart will be based on the time that you drew the chart. So you've got a strange sort of hybrid kind of chart, but that's the way, you know, it works. And the software will track that. The other thing here under numerology is quite interesting. I find this thing works pretty good. So this is based on a numerological system taught by Pandit Harish Johari. He wrote a very fine book on numerology. And basically what he's doing is converting all the letters of the name into a number. And that number is obviously relatable to a planet. It's a number out of 9. So every letter in the name matters in this particular system. And it's quite interesting, actually, how it works. But if you're trying to decide on a name for, say, a new business or something, this is something you could possibly use. So there's nothing to click or do. You just see the number here after you put the name in here. And if you change the name here, it'll automatically change here. Good. Now, up the top here, we have some useful buttons. I strongly recommend that you press the New Chart button when you want to start a new chart. This will clear all the data, because if I start typing a new chart now, the extra things I've stored, like events and notes and things, will all still be there. But you click New Chart, then you're starting with a blank chart. So we click the new chart. When you've finished, actually, if you just click OK, it'll ask you if you want to save the chart. You will have noticed that already. If you change the chart, click Update if you want to save the change. Otherwise, it won't be saved. And then we have these other buttons here. So Notes is just information you can type in. In version 9, there's no restriction on the length of the notes. So you can add any amount of stuff. So that's very useful. Events, let's go over the events. So in most cases, when you ask people for events, and I find it's extremely useful to ask for a few events, then they give you a date. Sometimes they just give you the year. That's not a lot of use for Jyotish. But if they give the month, and sometimes they'll give the day, and occasionally the time and the location. So for all normal uses of these events, unless it's a particularly important event, in which case I end up converting it into a linked chart. But for most cases, just the date is really what matters. So anyway, here you can click in you can type in what happened, the basic description of the event. And then in these buttons, you can, here in these fields, you can enter the date, month, and year. And basically, if you tab into this field, if you type 2 digits, it'll go automatically to the next field. And if you type 2 more digits, it'll go to the year field. And if you type 4 digits, it'll go to the time field. So you don't actually have to do anything more than type the digits of the year, day, month, year, or month, day, year, depending on how you have the software set up to quickly enter these things. And then you click add. Or if you're in a super fast mode, then press Alt-A on your keyboard, and that's the same thing as clicking this button. And then they'll start stacking up here in a chronological order. You don't have to worry about the chronology. You can put things in any order, but the computer will sort them chronologically. And when you click OK, they'll be saved to the disk. So it's permanently saved. So that's how you enter events. Events are very useful. And in the second half, we'll go into how they can be used with dashes and things. So that's this. Now, the only other thing I want to draw your attention to is the search. Now, you've probably discovered different ways of searching for your data. There are multiple ways of finding what you want. One of the ways is just to start typing something here. So if you start from the beginning of the name, and then you either press the down arrow key on the keyboard, or you click here, which amounts the same thing, you'll see it goes immediately to the first name that has those initial characters, and then all the other names in alphabetical order beyond that. So that's one way. Down here, there's a little field, and we could type any part of the word of the name, and then as soon as you type something here, then the search button gets dark, and if you click on that, it will also find the first record that has that particular string of characters, and then you can keep clicking next until you find what you want. A third way of doing this is to click the search button. Now this is much more powerful because you can search not just for names, but dates, just the year, month, or day, the birthplace, the status, whatever that, how you use that field is optional. Occupation, notes, you can search for things in the notes. You can search for things in the events, or the whole record, rating, or the whole record. And so you select what you want here, what you want to search on, then you type something here, and then you click go, or hit the enter key. And it'll create a whole list here. So we can try. And there's only one Lincoln in this database. So you get a list here. And if you get a long list, then you can click make list into B group, like I mentioned before. And now when you want to look at the B group list in the data entry, you'll see all those charts saved for you. So it becomes very easy. And there are even easier ways of getting at the B group when you're working in the main screen. So once you've selected a group of charts, then it's very, very easy to work with those charts in the main screen because of this listing. Okay, well, I hope that's clear. This is very powerful. I use it a lot. Now, I want to say a few words about files. Here, we're going to talk a little bit about these menus. And the first thing you see at the top of the menu list, the file menu list, is references to databases. Now, some of you may use software where every single chart you type in is a separate file on your computer. But the normal way that regular software works is that it keeps all its information in a database. Now, there may be several databases, but typically each database will contain multiple records. So, for example, at the top here, it says database. See this at the top? Database famous.sjc. So that means that there's a whole bunch of famous people in that database. And you can create your own databases. You just go File, New Database, and then you give it a name, whatever it is, clients, friends. You can have any number of databases. And the last 3 databases you've used appear at the bottom here, so you can get at them with one click. You can change the name of a database with Save Database As. You can even set a default database, so it'll always start with that one. You can back the database up to, say, a flash drive, or restore it from the flash drive. There's various things you can do here. Another thing that occasionally you might want to use is you create a list. So you have a B group, a large B group, and you decide you want to save it as a separate database, which you could then, email to somebody else with the software if you wanted to. So then you can use make file from current list. So whatever list is present here, whatever you chose in this area here from these choices will become the separate database. And then if you decide you want to merge a database into another database, you can use merge in file. So if you have multiple databases and you decide you want only one, then you can just merge each one of them in and you'll end up with one database. So these are the particularly useful things here. Another thing is switching the date format. So if you normally when you first start the software you choose, but if you want to choose something different, you just click here and it'll switch between last name, first name, or first name, last name, like that. Plus no, that's the last name, first name is down here. Sorry. This is between the month, day, year, or the day, month, year scheme. Good. Now, here under import, export, there are various options. You can import files from other softwares. If you have a whole lot of Parashuras like XML files, there's a separate little app I created which will import them just instantly. So that's available on the website. I expect many of you have seen that. When you log in, you'll find it's optional download. Good. There's one other funny thing here, or this is city abbreviations. If you get tired of typing the name of your city or some city, you can put it on this list and then it'll just be necessary. See, if you type TOR and then hit the tab key, it'll turn it into Toronto, or NY for New York, LAX for Los Angeles. So these are things. You can edit this list, you can add to this list. It's just a convenience. You can ignore it if you want to. Good. Now, I just wanted to say something about the data backups. Of course, it's very, very recommended that from time to time you back up your data, because occasionally hard disks crash or computers get stolen or something happens and it's not there anymore. But if you happen to have it on a flash drive or a portable hard drive or something, then of course you can get all your data back, or maybe you've saved it to the cloud in some form. So all that's good. But what the software is doing is that it's every time you make your database smaller, even if you just delete one character, it will save a copy. So you'll find up to 10 copies of previous versions of the database are sitting in the Shri Jyoti star folder. And they're there just in case you decide that you didn't want to delete that item. Or for some reason you want to go back and recover something you deleted. So they're all sitting there. You go to File, Open Database. And then you want to select down the bottom here, the Shri Jyoti backup data files. And then you find, well, it might, I've got a lot. Because each database has multiple. And you can select one. It'll then make you convert it into a regular database. And you'll find it becomes the thing that you're working with here. So that's a great convenience. But I still recommend backing up your data on a regular basis in some ways. I mean, you can back up one database with this thing, charts database backup to media. So that's pretty much fast, but I back up all my documents regularly because, you know, there's lots of things you want to save. And that saves, if you've backed up your documents, it saves the whole Shri Jyoti star folder with your layouts, with your options and so forth. Great. Now, tags, we've talked about the A group and the B group, and there's a tags menu here. And basically, this is just some quick shortcuts. Like you can clear all the A group tags, you can clear the B group tags. But you decide, okay, now I'm going to make a selection of charts from my database because for some reason, maybe I'm giving a lecture, I would need some examples and I just want to keep those guys together. So what I do is I select the charts from the list, whatever it is. Say you've got your alphabetical list, you select a chart, then you go here and you want to apply, first you've cleared the group, then you apply the tag, whether A or B, and update. See, it's all done by pressing the F10 key on your keyboard, or you select it from here. Most things in the software that you might want to use regularly have a shortcut key. It's either Control something or F something, but they're always listed in the menus like this. And then you can untag and so forth. And the actual tag of a particular chart is shown down here. See the tag field? So you've got three choices, A, B, now, or none, because now it's also a tag. If something is tagged now, that means that every time you load that chart, it'll just adopt the time and date of that moment that you loaded it. So you don't want regular charts to be tagged now, but all your now location charts will be tagged now. And they should stay tagged now, otherwise they'll stop working. So normally you don't really need to change this here, but occasionally you might want to do that. Now under the data menu, there's quite a lot of useful things. I mean, these are all the buttons that are on the screen with the shortcuts, notes, events, nows, right? The thing I use the most here is this F8. This one here, last session's primary native 2 and other loaded charts. So suppose when you're working, if you work for some time with the software, you probably look at a number of charts. And all of those charts might be relevant to some particular project you have. So next time you start the software, if as soon as the software starts up, you press the F8 key, or when your data entry comes, you select this item, then all the charts you were working with on the previous occasion will load just as they were before, and you'll go straight into the page you were looking at previously. So you'll end up back where you were at the previous session. So it's actually unbelievably useful, I find. So anyway, I'm mentioning that. You can get your most recent saved record or most recent location using these things. You can look up birthdays in any month for the last 7 days or something, if you want to. All right. If there are places where the software asks you if you want to save something, if you really want to change something, and there's just a few such things where it might be you just don't want to be asked again and again, so you can determine here whether you want to be asked or not. So if this is checked, then you'll be asked, otherwise not. This is useful because there are multiple ways of entering data. And the first one is assuming the 2-digit year entry. Now, when I first wrote this software, it was a long time ago. And so I picked the range 1920 to 2019 because it had to be 99 years. And we're getting to 2019, so this may change. But anyway, that's if you have selected this and you type 20, you'll get 1920. Now be careful, because some people assume that if they type 20, they'll get 1920. But if the software doesn't convert it to 1920, then you're going to generate a chart for 8020. Some event in the life of Jesus, perhaps. So people, on rare occasions, is rare, but it happens maybe once a year. Someone complains that they've got the wrong chart. It's because they're looking at, AD 70 instead of 1970. So that's something I'm just mentioning. But so you can choose to assume 2-digit dates or 4-digit dates, because there could be 3-digit dates also. And the BC dates, there's also them as well. But most of the time, at the moment I'm using this. A lot of the time I use this. It just depends, really. But if you remove these two, then it won't jump to the next field when you type in a certain number of digits for the year. That's the only difference that this thing makes. And then you can have month names rather than numbers. And these are other little bit more esoteric things here you can look into. Then there's 2 versions of data entry in terms of dates. You see, I have a thing called free form date entry. If we uncheck that, you'll see now the date entry is just like it is in events. You type 2 digits, it goes to the next part, either day or month, depending on the entry scheme. So, some people will like this, and then you've got these little up and down clickies. So if you like that, use that. And if you prefer just entering it like this, then we can use this. And if you're entering a date like this, then you don't have to type 2 digits, but you do have to type something that's not a digit between the day and the month and the year. So you could leave spaces, you could put a slash or a comma, it doesn't matter. As long as it's not a digit, you're fine. And if you mess up and you want to go back, then of course Control Z or Z on the keyboard is the shortcut for undoing things, as usual. And then there's help. Now there's help everywhere in the software. And if you click the help button here, then you'll get help on this screen. It'll be most of the things I've discussed, maybe a few extras. So this is a fairly comprehensive look at the data entry screen. I know I've gone quite fast, but hopefully it's been useful and you can review the recording. Now, to get to the main screen, you're going to click one of these buttons at the bottom. So if you click OK, then just this chart you've typed in will be loaded. If you click OK plus transit, then the chart that you've typed in will be loaded as the primary chart, and the secondary chart will become a transit chart. If you haven't entered any transit locations in your database, it'll make one up based on the location of the primary chart. And then we have OK plus special. So there's a few goodies here. The first thing that it comes up with usually is Varshphal. So you can enter the year and optionally the month and the day for the Varshphal, whether you want a true solar return or a mean solar return. These are the two options. And then the location, which is usually the same location as the natal chart, but that's your choice. If you change the location, you can just click Atlas, or it'll probably work automatically anyway. So that's the typical use for this thing. Then you can, if there are some events that have been entered, it'll just create a chart from that information. You can create a Muhurta chart. This is just basically a way of naming a particular chart. You put in the name and the date and the city and the place, and it'll generate a chart. This is a convenience. You can create a sunrise chart for a date. And this here at the end is the Tithi Pravesh. So Tithi Pravesh is a very interesting alternative to the Varshphal. Varshphal is based on the solar return, while the Tithi Pravesh is based on, it's also an annual chart, but it's based on the moment when your particular Tithi occurs. So it's got to be the same solar month and the same Tithi of the bright or dark half. So that's a lunar day, basically. So in India, that's really the birthday. Birthdays are celebrated based on the Tithi or lunar day. All the festivals are based on the Tithis. It's the standard thing. So some people like that. And there's even a special Dasha system for working with the Tithi Pravesh. Pravesh means entry, which you can access in the main screen. So if we click OK, it'll generate a Tithi Pravesh chart. Oh well, this is some tiny village somewhere in America, in England, which isn't in the Atlas. There are occasionally some things. If you find a location, and I'm working on a much bigger Atlas, but if you find a location which is not in the Atlas, then just pick the nearest larger town. And if you want, you can adjust the latitude and longitude and just update the chart for that. Good. So now we've gone into the main screen. And now we have a vast amount of things we can think about. But the first thing that's probably important is getting back to the data entry. Because often we're going to want to go back to the data entry. And there are multiple ways of doing this. So people tend to, I've noticed a lot of people, they just go to the File menu, and there's nothing wrong with this. So you can have a new primary native or a new native 2. If you go to the Edit menu, then you can go back and edit. See, this is the primary here. This is the primary here, Alfred Lord Tennyson. And here is his native 2, which happened to be the Tithi Pravesh chart. So suppose you want to change this to something else, or we want to edit it in some way, then we're going to go here and we click native 2 data. Right? Now that's I think, what I would call the slow way of doing it. But there are other ways. You see next to each date name, there are some buttons. So the first one, this is for a new primary native. And this is for editing the primary native. And this is for a new native 2. And this is editing it. The main distinguishing feature of primary and native 2 is the color. This is blue and this is red. Now you can, in the options, change that to everything black or some other colors, but the software is kind of, there's some advantage to keeping the two different colors, as you'll see, because everything on the screen that has a red heading, you know it belongs to this one. And everything with the blue heading, you know it belongs to this one. You see, on this screen at the moment, there's nothing with a blue heading, but that could be changed easily. Now, if you decide you don't like colors, I mean, some people just don't feel comfortable with color. They prefer black and white or something like that. Then you can set the headings so that it shows some part of the name of the person. So it still works fine. Okay, so you can do these buttons here, but another way, which is really the original way I designed, which is just to click on the date or time. If you click on the date or time, you get a chance to change them. So it seem to be rational. I know there's a lot of people don't use that. I'm just mentioning it because I think it's the fastest way. And if we click on here, now, if you have a Varshphal chart or a Tithi Pravesh chart, and you go back to data entry, the first thing that will come up is an opportunity to change the year, because this is what people typically want to do. So you can just change the year, click OK, and you've gone to the next year, or whatever year you choose. But if you really want to change the chart to something else, then you can click skip and go to data entry, and here you go. So that's a very important thing. For Varshphal and for Tithi Pravesh, this is one fast and easy way of changing the information. Now, you'll see that this chart here has got this name here, has got little brackets, these sort of called sharp brackets around it. Well, this one doesn't. Now, that's a kind of focused. So there are certain things that you can change that will apply to either of these charts, and it applies to the one with the little brackets around it. So if we click on this name here, it gets the bracket, see that? And the main thing that this applies to, not the only one, but the main thing, is if you want to change the time. So let's talk about changing the time, because that's something that's very, you use a lot. So there are multiple ways of changing the time. And one of them is using these buttons here and this area here. So you see this, it says 1 hour, 50 minutes and 58 seconds. Now, if we click on that, you'll see all the choices. And the choices run from 1 second. See, now it says 1 second. All the way up to actually 40 years is the maximum you can have. You can just put in 40 here and set this to 0. And there's all sorts of possibilities in between. So let's say we're going to change by 1 hour. Now these buttons do the changing, and they will change the chart that has the brackets around it. So you have to be careful for changing the chart you want to change. Okay, that's the only thing to think about. And your choices here, these little brackets, these little buttons with the double brackets means going back 1 increment or going forward 1 increment. And these ones will keep running forwards. So suppose you're looking at a transit chart and you want to scan forwards or backwards, looking for something, then you can run it forwards or backwards at any speed you choose, really. And there is a whole menu for this, the time, space, change menu, where you can control the speed. And even when it's running, you can change the speed. So you can speed it up, you can slow it down. This is very cool, actually. And, you can double the speed. See the double the speed or half the speed. And here you're setting the increments. And there is actually a way of using this for moving the longitude, geological longitude, or latitude. In other words, the location. You can use this for scanning locations as well. That's a little bit sophisticated usage. But most of the time, you're going to be changing the time. So this is the one way of doing it. So if you're getting down to, if you're one of those great astrologers who can rectify down to the second, you're going to do it here. You know, you're going to create a 1 second adjustment and click a few times until you've got exactly what you want. Most of the time, we're going to be down to 1 minute, maybe 5 minutes. So I created a separate thing, which I call the time change bar. There's a little button here. It's kind of a clock with a blue border. Or you can get to it from the time space change menu. Show time change bar. See that? So this brings up this little bar. And you've got choices. See, 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 Navamsha. Well, the nice thing about this bar is you can step forward Navamsha by Navamsha or Rashi by Rashi. That means a sign. So the Rashis are different lengths, but it'll keep on moving to the beginning of the next Rashi. It's very convenient. Or you can move by hours, days, 7 days, months, or years. So this is another great convenience. And you can put this wherever you like and remember where you put it. Okay, so this is for moving the time. For example, let's say we decide that we don't like this 5 minutes past midnight time, and we're going to move it 10 minutes later. So we just click here, and you'll see it's now 15 minutes past midnight. So that's how things change. And you see the ascendant is changing here. All right, now I want to discuss a little bit about layouts. But first, let's talk about the layout examples. This page is the page that you typically get when you first start the program. Now, the software, the built-in layouts are not really calculated based on the size of your screen. So this might have too much information for a small screen, and you can just make it smaller. You can do that, change that easily. You just go to the page wizard, it's up here. There are again multiple ways of doing this. And you can change from this 5x4 format down to say 4x3. Like that. And when you click here, everything gets bigger. So people sometimes ask, well, how can I get a bigger point size in the tables? You just have to give them more space, because the size of the letters and numbers is simply calculated on the size of the table. And therefore, if you have less tables on the screen, everything gets bigger. There really isn't any obvious alternative way of doing it. That struck me anyway. So another thing is the format menu up here. You see 4x3 is one of the choices. I could have just selected this. I could go 3x3 and then everything gets bigger again. So this is a fast way of changing things. Now, if we look on the layout examples, when you click on the word layout examples, you should see a list, and almost invariably you do. But if for some reason the layout examples file, which has all this information, is missing, and I can't think of any way that the thing would go missing, but I have come across people who've managed to lose it somehow. So you just simply rerun the installation file and it'll put it back in there. So that's a very unusual kind of circumstance. But if you've got, this may be quite a lot of you, if you've got version 9 and you previously had version 7, then it's possible that you're not seeing this complete list. Now, in the emails I sent out when people got the software, I did say how to change it, and it's there in my webpage under the FAQ right at the top. But let me just show you, because the problem was that when people were upgrading, I didn't want to force them to switch to a different layout example in case they had some reason why they wanted to stay with the previous. So it's an option. So you go to the File menu, and you go to Layouts and Layout Examples, and you go to Import as Layout Examples. See that? Then you'll get the usual file dialog, and you'll see there are two files here, layx.sjl and layx2.sjl. Now these are other SJL files. These are layout files. This is the one that we're using at the moment. This is another one with a lot more information in it. So you can have multiple files, but these ones are the ones that I provide, and they are layout files that are very complete. They have names for every page and all that. So they are very valuable. And this is the one, this is the version 7 one, still works with version 9. But if you go here and select this one and open it, then you'll get some extra pages and some improvement to the pages. So that's all you have to do. You just click open, and there it is. So you'll find listed under here, there are more, and there are some interesting things that were perhaps not so easily accessible before. And we'll discuss some of them in the second session. So that I strongly recommend. So for example, we say this page is very fine, but we want to something else. So we select something from here. Let's say we want a page of graphs. So it'll ask us if we want to replace the current layout. So this whole page will disappear. And normally speaking, you probably wouldn't want to override this page. So we say put it on a blank page. So it's gone to page 2 and it's put it here. So there's a whole lot of charts, graphs, which you can find in the software. I'm not sure it's all the graphs, but it's quite a few of them. So this is page 2. You see up here we have the page number. And then these buttons move us between the pages. Now the page up and page down keys on your keyboard will also work. So that's an option. You can use your keyboard, or you can use these buttons. Or you can go to the Pages menu and you can select a page. So what you see in version 9 is there's 36 pages you can fill up. And in version 7 there's 24. So I added 12 pages. I was definitely overrunning 24. So if you experiment and you have a lot of things you're doing, then you could easily fill multiple pages. And if you create a page, we're going to talk about creating pages. When you take a layout examples page, the name will be appearing here. But if we go to page 3, which is currently blank, and we put some things here, then we might like to give it a name. So we can say name the page. And we can call it my page, or whatever we like to call it. And now that will be appearing here. So, of course, we'll probably put some description of the things that we've put on that page or what we're going to do with that page. But you'll see, once you realize how easy it is to create pages and have exactly what you want on the page, then you will be creating pages which are for, various types of work that you do with your software. Now, one of the handy things for creating a page, just so you're not faced with this intense white, is to click on these buttons here. So this is shows the grid. So this shows that this page only has 2 slots. So if I click here, I'll put a chart there or something there and something here. So we can change the format maybe to something else, like 4:3. It all depends on the size of your screen and what you want to do and all that. So this is a 4:3 layout. And occasionally, you know, those who are really into some artistic things, they might decide they want to put things very, what I call fine way. You decide exactly where you want to put it. So if you select this other button here, then you get what I call the fine grid. See the green, and you see the cursor has changed. So this cursor means you're working with the fine grid. So let's say we want to put a chart. So we go a chart, say we want a large sign chart. So now it appears wherever I clicked, and we can just move it around. So because the fine grid is snapping to the grid, but you've got a lot of variability you can introduce. And you can grab this, see this little triangle at the bottom, you can grab hold of that, and you can do what you like, really. So that applies to charts and graphs. Tables are kind of fixed for the size they are, but you can move them around. So this way you can create an interesting page. If you want to put a background, you can just click somewhere and you say background. I mean, you can get to this by, you can go to page formatting and then select background. It's in here somewhere. And then you can browse for an image. Something like a sunset. You'll see it appear here. And then you can decide whether you want it stretched to fit in the space, or there's a wallpaper means the thing keeps repeating if the image is smaller than the screen. And then here it is. You turn off the grid. Got a nice background. Now then you can choose to make your charts transparent. That's an option. It all depends if you really want to see what your planets are doing, but basically the idea is that you can do all kinds of fun things with the software. You can put a border around the outside, and there's lots of options. So anyway, so this is layouts. When you turn off the grid, one of the cool things is that it turns off the dragging and dropping, so you can't mess up your page. So if you want to drag and drop it, turn on the grid and you can move it around like that. And that effectively locks it. I'm going to talk for a few minutes and then see if there's any comments on the chat. I mean, you can put, you know, requests or anything on the chat. And find the chat. It'll be in there somewhere. All right, so let's talk a little about the choices and options. Now, this, when you click on something, you get this. Now, this is a bit similar to version 6, although it looks very different. But basically, you have charts, tables, graphs, dashes, global colors, global options, and a few other goodies, including page formatting. And that all comes under the home menu, the little house here. Otherwise, if you click on a chart, it'll go straight to the charts page and it'll give you the chart choices. Now, there are an awful lot of chart choices. So in both version 6 and this version, they're sorted into the common choices and all choices. So if you want all choices, you just click show all. And if that's too much, you click show most commons. So these are just common charts. And then always at the top, you see these green ones here are different kinds of commands, like choosing which native you want for this chart. Just click here and you select from, these are the ones that have been created during this session. You see, we could select Lincoln, for example. And then at the top here of all the chart situation, you have the chart options. So everything you can do with charts is listed here. And the top two are the ones that are most commonly in use. So the first one is for selecting which planets you want to see in the chart. And you can make this dialogue a little bigger so then you can see everything. So if you want to put, say, the Aruda Lagna, you just click here. See a check mark comes. You can have lots of Arudas or a few Arudas, and then multiple other things here that people use. So you can just decide what you want, and house cusps or whatever. So many different options, really. If you want house cusps, click here, and you see you've got a choice between just the midheaven or all the house cusps. Let's say we select that. Now, if we click done, we see all the different house cusps. It says B because it's Baba. Let's switch to the English style. So this is under language. Once you get used to typing, it's just so fast. But you can drill down into these things. This is under global options. Global options have a slightly different color here. So global language. And it gives you a list of options. So these are different versions of sort of English or English plus a kind of Sanskrit transliterated, which is what I'm using at the moment. Then you've got Devanagari, you've got Tamil, you've got a bit of Chinese or Japanese. So let's say anyway, let's switch to English basically. So H for the houses, MO for the moon, like that. So there's a lot more to charts. There's some little videos on the website, so I don't have to repeat all this. But these are sort of basic things. Now let's say a few more things about the choices and options. You see this little button here with a heart on it. This is the favorites. So these are the things that have recently been clicked by me. You know, it just keeps a track of every time you click on something, it adds it to the favorites. If something hasn't been used for a while, it drops off the bottom. And these things are very useful. I mean, if you keep on doing the same thing, instead of searching for it, you just click the favorites and you'll soon realize where on this list the thing is sitting. See, here's the global language thing. And, you know, this way a kind of spatial memory develops. So it's actually very convenient. See, chart options are here, the language is here, various other things. So the favorites, don't miss out on the favorites. These buttons are just for making this bigger or smaller. So sometimes, I've definitely improved this recently, but previously when you got the software, sometimes these things came out a little bit small and squished. So you can adjust it with this. Now, if you have some kind of retina, you know, these high resolution screens, that was also doing strange things. So if these two buttons aren't perfecting this point size here, this little button here at the end is a new thing for the high resolution screens. And clicking between these buttons, you'll probably find an optimum. On Windows PCs, you can turn on the high resolution mode somewhere in the Windows options. And once that's turned on, then some of this may not look quite right, but by clicking this button at the end, you'll generally find something that works. All right. This is the basic thing. You're searching here. Let me say something more about searching. Suppose you want house systems. You could just type a little bit of both words. So you see global house system. You don't have to type all of the thing. You just type a little bit. And if there are multiple words, that's also fine. And one of the fantastic things about this dialogue is that if you type something, say you type Shadbal, then everything related to Shadbal comes up. That includes not only the tables, graphs and things, but also the options that make a difference. So the thing with the Shadbala is different people have different ideas about how to calculate the various parts of Shadbala. So there are some options. For example, there are variations like the Hora chart. Are we going to use the Parashara Hora chart? Are we going to use some other Hora chart? So you can just decide what the default is going to be by clicking here and choosing from the various options which are available. And once you've chosen that, then when you do the Shadbala, it will use that one. And it'll use it for the Vimshapak, but it won't necessarily, you see, when you look at a Hora chart on the screen, all of these options will be right there. You can choose whichever you like. It won't change how the Shadbala is calculated. So I think I'm just going to explain that a bit more, because this is something that people ask me. So those options, like this is to do with how planetary war is calculated. There's a few different options. I mean, the first one is the one that's kind of basically what Parashara says. Sanjay has a little bit sophisticated development on that, but this is basically what he uses. So you just decide what you want to use, and you then you'll get the thing calculating based on those options. So whatever it is you enter, if there are any options that are relevant, they will show if you've entered enough of that word to select the thing. So that's very useful, because previously you had to know what options you had to set. So let's just try creating a Hora chart. And one of the fast ways is to type the number 2. And here's a Hora chart. We'll talk about different types of north, south, east, west, and all that. But right now, of course, we're using the South Indian chart. And this is a typical chart, because Parashara has only used Cancer and Leo when he described the Hora chart. So, of course, once in the last 10 years, somebody ring me up and say, oh my God, my Hora chart is so fantastic. All the planets are in 2 signs. So it's just how it is. You may want to get rid of these house cusps that we just click and change it. But if you change here at the top, see this, I call this a switch. And if there's a little bracket on either side, that means that it cycles through a number of options, either to the left or the right. We click here. This is called the Jagannath Hora. That's familiar to Sanjay's students. Now, some of these Horas are known by other names. The help I've put as much as I can. Kashinath Hora is another one. Sama Saptika, this is the 1-7 thing, Aries, Libra, and so forth. So these are different Hora charts. In the Jaimini, there's 10 different Hora charts, It's a big area. But this is in all the charts where there is a chance of a variation, like Drekana charts, then the switch is up the top here. And you just cycle through to the one you want, and then it's on the page, and that's what will stay there until you change it. Good. Let me see. All right. I'm going to have a look through the chat. Okay. Yes. All right. So Camilla's asked that we just quickly show entering chart data. So we'll do that, and then we'll get to the other questions. So you click New, and then you just enter the name, and then you enter the date. We went over that. We'll do it again. So whatever it is. And then you put the time in, and the place. The state or country. Now then it'll jump to the gender. The default is feminine. You can type M if you want to masculine chart, or you just click on the Click on the box, it'll change. And when you leave the gender chart, it fills out the first letter. Now, a lot of software doesn't even give you this option, but the truth of the matter is that the first letter is very much important in Jyotish. And there are many, many calculations that use the first letter. Now, a lot of these calculations are rather advanced, and there's only a few in my software, but it does make a difference. So the software will automatically calculate it for you, but you can change it if you don't think it got it right. And there is, you can see the whole list here. So it's only used for a few things, but that's a factor there. Okay, so Wendy wanted to ask a question. She can.
Oh, yes, hi. You mentioned earlier about the TT Pravesh, and I don't know that much about TT Pravesh, but I do understand about TT in a general, broader sense, but you said you can look at your own TT. Are you referring to your own moon TT or the whole chart TT? I'm not that familiar with what you meant by that.
Let me explain that. So let's say, you were born some time ago and you're interested in to do an annual chart for this year. So let's pick somebody more recent, Bill Clinton. Okay, so then we decided to do his Tithi Pravesh for this year. So we click OK plus special, and we say 2018, and we click OK. So now we have a Tithi Pravesh chart up here, which is from the 2nd of September. I think I'm running in, I'm running in European modes dates at the moment. So these two charts here, let's just get rid of this. You want to get rid of something, you just type a little bit of delete, and it'll be gone. All right. So let's put a Tithi Pravesh chart here, and so I just click there, and I'm going to create a chart, and I'm going to set it to make it a little bigger. Turn on the grid. I'm going to change it to the Tithi Pravesh chart. Now, the fastest way of doing that is actually just to right-click on the chart and say switch. It's in the middle of the right-click. I'm going to talk about the right-click. Let me get rid of all these Bava cusps. Okay. It's down here. I could have done that from the favorites. All right. So this is now the Tithi Pravesh chart for this year for Bill Clinton. So then we analyze it. He's got Rahu rising with Mercury. It's a little bit difficult chart, huh? Now, I mentioned earlier that there's a Tithi Astotri Dasha system. So let me show you that. We click somewhere like this, and we go, well, let's just look at it like this. We go to Dashas, and then there's just a few Dashas mentioned here. You click show all, you'll see more. There's a lot of Dashas. And you see Tithi Ashtotri Dasha. So this Dasha, let's see, if we can put it down here, is calculated over 1 year. But we have to apply it to the, we have to again apply it to the Tithi Pravesh chart. I could have done it with the right click. I just showed you the other way of doing it. So you see, it's starting here. The actual beginning of the year was the 2nd of September. And then it runs for 1 year until the 2nd of September, 2019. So these are the different dashas. And you can see, some levels of the dashas like that. So if you decide that there's some particular problem in the chart, say we see this Mars Ketu conjunction in Capricorn, well, that was going on recently. We know about that. But suppose you want to see when that might affect him. So then we can just go to, you can scroll through the dashas using the wheel on a mouse, or sometimes works on a trackpad. Otherwise, you can use the other ways of moving around. We'll get into that at some point. So in the Titiya Stotri, there's no Ketu. It's a particular dasha which doesn't have Ketu, but we can see, okay, this might be a bit difficult, this period here. So this is how you work with the Titiya Stotri. Does that answer your question? It's a kind of annual chart with its own dasha system.
Yes, you did. Exactly. I wasn't sure if you were just referring to someone, your moon, but to the whole chart and the period, narrowing it down, you answered it perfectly.
Exactly.
Thank
Exactly.
you so much.
That's fine. Thank you so much. The software will calculate when you have your sort of solar lunar return. That's what the Titi Pravesh is. It's a solar lunar return. In other words, it's the exact moment from the lunar month point of view that you were born on in that year. And then that's like the new year for you. And then you can see what the planets were doing at that time and how they progress through the year. So it's a very nice system, and it actually works really well, I would say. So I recommend that to you for research.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about saving charts as PDFs, emailing them to other people, and all that. We're going to do that probably after the break. So right now we'll see what simple questions we've got. It's easy, but okay, you want to create a new transit location. So let's say we go back to the data entry by clicking here, skip and go to data entry. And you want to create a new location, just click the new location chart and then enter some new location, whatever. Remember we had some shortcuts. So SF for San Francisco. You can add your own, and then CA for California, and it's created it. Now, of course, I already had one, so I could just click yes for updating. It's not going to make any difference. But if you wanted to really create something new, that's how you do it. All right, someone's asked a rather advanced question. You see, Titi Pravesh and Varshphal are a little bit different. They have different systems, different dashas. So you can create your own page for the Titi Pravesh. You can modify the Varshphal page if you wanted to. But since the Varshphal pages are, and I created a whole bunch of new Varshphal pages in version 7, version 9, you can see there's actually 4 pages at the bottom here. So they're very much focused on the techniques we use for Varshphal. And I do recommend these pages, like particularly this first page. Let me show it to you. So I replaced that previous page, so it's gone. All right, so this is the new Varshphal page. See, you have a chart here. You have a dasha system here, which provides the progression throughout the year. Then you have the calculation for the Lord of the Year, which is important. And down here, this is new. So there are some indications for the different, it's a kind of mini report in a table. So it shows, the more favorable and the less favorable periods, which you can read here. And then over here, I don't know if you can see it, we'll just see, move the Zoom stuff away. So this is also new. What I've done is I've taken all the different balas or strengths which are used for Varshphal, and I've put them all in a table. Some people use them. So for example, the Harsha Bala, So harsha means happiness, basically, ha ha ha, you know. So it shows the different harsha bala, and there's each harsha bala is split into 4 sections, and here's the totals. So when it says happy here, it's actually based on these harsha bala totals here. And then there's the pancha bala, which is also listed here, and then the dwadasha bala, the 12, basically the 12 different vargas that are used by the Tajika system, the Varshphal system, all broken down here based on the different planets, and some measure of the percentage beneficence. So basically everything that you would calculate in Varshphal is here, plus a few sahams. You see the sahams. And you see at the side it says more, so you click through various sahams. All the different sahams are showing up here. Day sums, day, night, and so forth. You see, day, night. So this page is particularly useful. You've got the natal chart. You've got the chart for the year with the munta there, and so forth. So this is very Varshphal oriented. There are other pages like that. Like there's a page for all the Tajika Varga charts. Then you have the multiple years. Let me show you that. We're running out of time. We'll do this after the break. But you could, I think the best thing for Tithi Pravesh, because the main thing for Tithi Pravesh is the chart and the dasha. So you can just create your own page, but you can modify any page. I mean, you can change anything on this page. You just click on the thing and put something else. So some people use Muda Dasha here. So you just click here, type a bit of Muda, and select, say, this thing. So this is the Progress Muda Dasha. So it's easy to change things, very easy. I mean, this is one of the glories of this particular software. It's the flexibility. And so after the break, we'll talk about how to change the year quickly and easily, how to work with multiple years at once, things like that. And I'll answer more, about transits. We're going to do a whole lot of interesting things. So have a very nice snack or whatever you're going to do now, and I'll talk to you in half an hour. Okay? Namaste.